What's up, guys? Rick here with my top 5 fades for this week's Corales Puntacana Championship. These are guys that I'll either be significantly underweight on or I'll be avoiding them in general. Just not really thrilled about either betting or rostering them for a variety of reasons that I will explain. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into this week's fades. The first fade is the co-favorite, or favorite depending on where you're looking, Will Zalatoris. I've already placed a FOMO bet on him. He can go out and win this thing, no problem. But I think from a fantasy golf standpoint, where there is game theory involved, it might be bad to play Will Zalatoris, to roster him. I mean, he is $10,900. He is the most expensive player on DraftKings. He is coming in off of a grueling, grinding U.S. Open, and as much as I love everything that he's doing on the Korn Ferry Tour, he has very little PGA Tour experience, and week in and week out, we see the top players, the most expensive players, miss the cut or not provide value. I mean, $10,900. Will Zalatoris is going to have to finish probably in the top 5 or 6 of this golf tournament at least. And I think that is a really tough ask to go from, again, that grinding winged foot in New York to the Dominican Republic and back up all the crazy hype that he's already getting this week. I mean, he might be one of the highest owned golfers on the slate when all is said and done. And I just think I don't want to be part of a very highly owned, inexperienced golfer who is very expensive. It's just a recipe for disaster. And as bullish as I am over the long term for him, this feels like a spot to bob and weave off of Will Zalatoris. I don't expect myself to have too much of Charles Howell III, who is $9,700 on DraftKings. And I think in a week like this, where there are so many unknown golfers, so many golfers that are new to the average fan or even the fan that does pay attention, it will be comforting to get a familiar name, and that's Charles Howell III. And there was a time where he was an absolute lock to make the cut to finish in the top 20, but that was a couple of years ago. Charles Howell III still very relevant, still very good, but misses more cuts now than he ever did, and I really do wonder what his upside is. His best finish, a T3 at the 3M Open a handful of weeks ago. I mean, that's his first top 10 since last year's Zozo Championship, and you look at his last 4 starts, he's missed the cut. He's finished 44th, 48th, and 30th. He did grind through the U.S. Open last week, which I could be convinced is going to be a detriment for those golfers who had to play into the weekend at Winged Foot last week. So all those things put together, I'm out on Charles Howell III. I can already see steam gathering behind Charlie Hoffman. Again, a more familiar name, or at least by the standards of this field. And he does have a couple of good results recently. He finished 7th at the Workday Charity Open. He finished 13th at the Northern Trust. He made the cut at the Safeway in his last start. So I understand why people might be warm on Charlie Hoffman, but I'm looking at his strokes gained approach numbers, and to me, they are just too erratic. He lost 4.5 strokes at the 3M Open. A couple weeks later at the Northern Trust, he gained 6.7 strokes. He's kind of just jumping all over the place. It's not something that I particularly want to be a part of, especially when you talk about strokes gained approach or strokes gained ball striking, which is such an important stat week in and week out. I don't want to lay a bunch of investments or a bunch of shares on Charlie Hoffman, who's been all over the place at $8,900, when I think there are much better options both above and below him on the pricing board. Henrik Stenson is a guy that I kind of just threw my hands up. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Henrik Stenson because he's only played 3 times in the tour's restart. He's only played basically 5 times in 2020. So he played the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Then he played the first round of the Players. That was obviously canceled. And then since the return, it was a 35th at the WGC FedEx St. Jude. And then he missed the cut at both the majors, the PGA Championship and the US Open. And I think what is interesting, and I was surprised to even see him in this field. I don't know why he's here. I don't know if he's trying to round into form, if he's trying to win a golf tournament. That's going to be a much weaker field. But what I think is interesting, and Greg Ducharme actually brought this up to me on the First Cut podcast. That's the CBS sports podcast that I host. He mentioned that like when you're Henrik Stenson and you play a course like Corales Golf Club, you lose your advantage. You lose the fact that you can just hit 3-wood into these difficult fairways to hit, and then you can hit greens that others can't. Like, this is a resort course. You can bomb it out there. The rough is not going to be very thick. A lot of these guys are just going to be hitting everything to the middle of the green, and it's going to be a putting contest from 18 feet. And I think that's a really good point. So not only do I not have much information about Henrik Stenson, he's fairly expensive for a guy who's only played 3 times in 2020, including missing his last 2 cuts. He's priced here just because of his name value. And I think he does lose his advantage of being much better than the rest of the field on difficult courses. And that's not what we're going to see this week. So maybe if the wind kicks up, Stenson can use that, piercing ball flight to really take advantage of the rest of the field. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. So I'm out on Henrik Stenson. And my final fade is Graham McDowell. And I'm not sure how hot this take even is, but I do know that likable defending champions usually get at least a small bump, and that's exactly what Graham McDowell is. But the game's in rough shape right now. 4 consecutive missed cuts. He doesn't have a finish inside the top 30 since his win very early in 2020. It was the first week of February in Saudi Arabia, and he actually has lost the most strokes of anyone in this field who is priced over $6,500. So think about that. If you kind of removed the long-term form, if you removed the name, Graham McDowell should probably be priced in the $6,500 range. Instead, on DraftKings, he is $7,800. I guess just because of that name recognition and that defending champion status. So he's not someone that I would be very comfortable backing whatsoever. That'll do it. My top 5 fades for this week's Corales Puntacana. I think there's a couple of risky ones in there, but I think that there's logic and there's reason behind every single one of them, and I hope they help you make more informed and better decisions. Let me know what you think. Tweet me at RickRunGood or leave a comment below. Best of luck this week, and I'll talk to you soon.